The longest era of Geometry Dash, Update 2.1, has finally come to an end. Most of us remember the time during 2.0 when we were waiting for the next update to come out. Months went by after the first sneak peek, but it became a really long wait, and we didn't see the update until a whole 17 months after. But little did we know at the time, we were really being blessed with such short update times, because ever since this day, we haven't seen one major update to Geometry Dash. It's safe to say that the game now is way different to how it was when 2.1 first came out, so I figured, why not look back at the memories that were made and what exactly went down in the past 6 years. Right before 2.1 was released, the legendary extreme demon Yatagarasu was verified by Trusta. This sort of put the community in a pretty positive and high-spirited state right as we were making our way into the update. And just days later, 2.1 was finally released. It was a big relief. We saw that many parts of the update were leaked months before it actually came out, and as we all saw early stages of things like the new main level, we all just wanted to play. The new spider game mode, the new gauntlets, and even the new diamond collectible system all just made the game feel fresh again. The community was just starting to learn what the 2.1 editor had to offer. So many new and exciting levels were being put out, with lots of new projects being announced. The demon list back then was also obviously way different to how it is now. A couple months into 2.1, the top 3 demons on the list consisted of Yatagarasu, Erebus, and Sonic Wave, which was known in the community as the RGB series. If we take a look at where these levels are today, it's almost unbelievable. Yatagarasu and Erebus have both dropped out of the top 150, and are both now part of what's called the Legacy list. Sonic Wave is nearing its fate as well. Early 2.1 gave us many great things to look back on, and on the 15th of November 2017, we got minor update 2.11, which gave us little new additions and bug fixes, but if only we knew that it would turn out to be the last update we would see for a very long time. Just to put in perspective how long we've been waiting for 2.2, take a look at when Geometry Dash was first released back in August 2013 compared to Update 2.11. The time between Update 2.11 and now takes up over half of Geometry Dash's lifespan, which is pretty crazy to think about. At the time, people had pretty high hopes for 2.2's release. Days after 2.11 dropped, we saw RobTop posting 2.2 teasers to his YouTube channel to try to get the community hyped for what 2.2 had to offer. We saw the very first footage of new features like the random trigger and the new camera controls, adding lots of further depth to what was at the time a pretty fresh feeling game. Some of the first 2.1 mega collabs were being put together, as we saw with the release of Digital Descent, which was, funnily enough, placed at top 1 upon release for some reason. We even saw the release of Geometry Dash Sub-Zero, a free Geometry Dash mobile game that had 3 brand new levels, giving the community their first feel of the new 2.2 features. And now the hype was beginning to get pretty real. It was middle of winter in 2017. We were nearing 1 year of Geometry Dash 2.1's release, and the feeling of anticipation for Update 2.2 was increasing by the day. We had a new number 1 hardest demon in Plasma Pulse Finale, which was top for a couple of months at this point, and we would actually see this change soon after. Remember when Trusta verified Yatagarasu right in the middle of the 2.1 release hype? Well, just over a year later, on February 20th, 2018, Novelboy verified the new top 1 Bloodlust. It's also pretty cool to consider that we saw something similar when Riot verified Bloodbath just weeks before Update 2.0 released, and so we seem to be going through a similar pattern. It was expected that 2.2 would be releasing in the near future, but we couldn't have been more wrong. 2018 would go on without any word on what was happening with 2.2, but nonetheless, the community would continue to remain pretty active. After the placement of Bloodlust on the Demons list, we saw the rise of many controversies. Some of the game's top players had agreed that Bloodlust should not have been placed ahead of Plasma Pulse Finale on the Demons list. Along with this, we also saw players like Sonix get banned from the Demons list because of the FPS bypass controversy, which caused a whole other situation, leading to the Demon list team member stepping down from his top position. 2018 also gave us some incredible levels that will never be forgotten, like Future Funk by Jonathan GD, which is now the 3rd most liked hard demon in the entire game. But once we got to June 2018, we reached the point where 2.2's waiting time overtook the amount of time we waited for 2.1. The year finished off with an interesting demon list and with no signs of 2.2 being released anytime soon, with the last update from RobTop being the release of Sub-Zero, which was over a year old at this point. But that would change in early 2019, when in the middle of nowhere, RobTop posted a new showcase to what he had been working on. He posted a new particle editor system that seemed to have been in the works for a pretty long time. On one hand, it was incredibly impressive to see how advanced the game and its editor was becoming, but some people began questioning RobTop. To some, it was a little unnecessary that RobTop was including so many advanced features into one update, which was the same reason why Update 2.1 took a little while. This criticism and negativity would start spreading throughout the community, and RobTop was starting to get a little bit of hate. On the same day, we also got a teaser for the new platformer mode, which again was something that really must have taken a long time to develop. It was reasonable to assume that platformer mode was the main reason why 2.2 was taking so long. Lots more would go down in 2019. We saw the controversial release of Zodiac, an extreme demon that would go on to remain top 1 for over 11 months. We saw the rise of many talented players, with Technical being considered among the best. Because of tech, big projects like Ouroboros and Ragnarok were beginning to be verified. However, one thing that is pretty important to look at is that at the end of some of the past major updates, the top community figures would come together to host a Geometry Dash awards ceremony, which included certain categories like Best Player or Best Creator for that certain time period. The results for each update were intended to be posted towards the end of that update cycle. This is what happened in GD 2.0, when Vibrant uploaded the 2.0 results in December 2016, leading to the release of Update 2.1 just over a month later. And so, when Vibrant announced the Geometry Dash 2.1 award nominees to his YouTube channel, the community went crazy. We ended off 2019 with the Geometry Dash 2.1 awards. Technical was awarded Best Player, the Demon list was looking incredible, and the hype going into 2020 was unmatched. The question of whether 2.2 was around the corner was being asked again. However, there was one problem. Usually by this point we would have received a sneak peek of the new main level coming in the next update. We've seen this ever since update 1.6, but with 2.2 we had nothing. It seemed unlikely that RobTop would drop 2.2 without a sneak peek first, but our questions would actually receive a quick answer. On January 19th, 2020, right as we passed 2.1's 3-year anniversary, RobTop uploaded a new editor feature of his new auto design system. The new feature was incredible, but we also got word that RobTop was in fact working on the new sneak peek. And so, although the disappointment came flooding back as usual, there was still at least something to look forward to. With early 2020, the legendary demon Tartarus was finally verified by Russian player Dolphy, which of course came with some controversy. Tartarus was instantly placed at number 1 once it got rated. Months passed by, and as the world was beginning to shut down due to the pandemic, many of us saw gaming as a way to pass all the free time we were given. All of a sudden, we were all indoors, creating levels, making content, and we were all just enjoying our time away from our responsibilities. This also allowed the top players to grind out some of the hardest levels, an example being the Golden verified by Nswish, which was given the top 1 spot on release. The lockdown era of Geometry Dash also gave us some of the most interesting and mind-blowing projects we would ever see. Up until this point, Sputniks was already an incredibly talented and intelligent creator, but when he dropped his level How in August 2020, it took over the entire game. Everyone was left wondering how these creators were able to push the limits of a game that hasn't seen a single major update in over 3 years at this point. Speaking of major updates, we still had no word on 2.2. RobTop didn't really have any excuse on what was taking him so long. Of course, we have to consider that he has a pretty difficult job in managing so many parts of his game as a solo developer. We can't forget that RobTop doesn't have a team and that he runs everything by himself. However, the community was getting pretty tired of waiting. Once we got to June 2020, we hit the point where the time between 2.1 and 2.2 officially surpassed the time between 2.1 and the game's first ever version. It even got to the point where Viprin had to change how he ran his award ceremonies. Instead of basing them off updates, he decided to host them yearly to actually give the community something to look forward to based on a guaranteed time period. We finished off another year with nothing, which was becoming a pretty common pattern. However, in 2021, we would finally see some lights. Unfortunately, the year started off with some terrible news. Towards the end of March 2021, it was announced by Viprin that the community legend Michigan had sadly passed away, with the reason being undisclosed by his family. Everyone came together to pay their respects and make tributes for Michigan and his family. Although we saw these kind gestures from the community, it's still sad to consider that the news being spread was originally against his family's wishes. Nonetheless, we saw lots of love being shown for Michigan, and it really showed that the impact he left on our community was clearly a massive one. As time went on throughout the year, we saw some changes to the game. The top 100 leaderboards was finally fixed and updated for the first time in years. The leaderboards had always been frozen and filled with hackers, so it was nice to see that the top 100 list was being carefully monitored and managed. Another community requested feature was also added by RobTop. He added an accessibility option that gave all the portals indicators on what their function was, rather than us only relying on difference in color. In 2021, we also saw the technology series by Anubis and Viprin come to an end, with Cybernetic Crescent being verified by Technical. But as Geometry Dash approached its 8-year anniversary in August 2021, we finally got something. Out of nowhere, RobTop had announced that the sneak peek was finally ready to be shown. He went on to premiere the video the very next day, and we finally got our first look of the new main level after 4 years. The 2.2 hype was back. The year then continued on as normal. The demons list was about to see a big change, as there were 2 new extreme demons that were both contending for the top 1 spot, Slaughterhouse and Firework. They were both added to the demons list on the same day, and so we saw Slaughterhouse just edging over Firework as the hardest level in the game, after being verified by Space UK, even though Doggy is now known as the true verifier of Slaughterhouse. We actually finished off a year with a little taste of 2.2, and also a big change in the demons list. In 2022, we saw one of the biggest jumps in skill and difficulty we've ever seen in Geometry Dash. Throughout the year, we saw lots of legendary demons verified which were once considered impossible. Right at the beginning of the year, we saw Sakupin Circles added to the number 1 spot after being verified by Diamond. We also saw the verification of the legendary level Silent Clubstep. The difficulty towards the top of the list was starting to get pretty insane. This level was never even meant to be beaten, and it was only recently considered to be possible. The fact that it was placed 4th on release really just showed how much the top players have evolved throughout the years. Slaughterhouse was eventually moved back to the number 1 spot. Slaughterhouse being back to number 1 also told us just how good of a player Space UK was, or how good of a player we thought he was. More on that later. And about 2.2, well, we didn't really see much until towards the second half of the year, where RobTop showed us another complex editor feature and even another main level sneak peek just weeks later. It was confirmed that we were actually getting 2 main levels, and only now were we realizing that 2.2 was going to be like a whole new game. This update was going to be so packed that it might have just been a better choice to space out its content over 4 or 5 different updates, but it was a bit too late for that. In September, we saw the verification of the new top 1 Acheron by the player Zoink, who is now considered to be one of the best Geometry Dash players of all time. Just like that, another year passed by, and now here we are in 2023. Once we got to the beginning of the year, we were all pretty tired of waiting, and we basically had given up hope of seeing 2.2 anytime soon. The community was still incredibly active. Zoink again proved himself as the best with his verification of the controversial level of Furnace, and to this day, we haven't seen a single victor other than Zoink, because of how horrible and how hard people consider the gameplay to be. This year, we also got to witness possibly the biggest hacking scandal in GD history. Space UK was exposed for cheating almost all of his top achievements, including the verification of Slaughterhouse. This scandal was even able to reach people outside of the Geometry Dash community, with Moist Critical's reaction being the biggest example of this. So many people came out to react and give their thoughts, with some incredible videos being put together to explain just how insane this was. As for the update, it almost felt like we all stopped caring, but there was one last thing that gave us a tiny little bit of hope. You see, 2023 marked the 10-year anniversary of Geometry Dash, and so RobTop announced that the special occasion would be celebrated with a special video. Maybe, just maybe, we'd get something, anything, any word on what was going on with 2.2, and this is what we got. That second went on to be the most replayed, most reacted to piece of Geometry Dash content we'd ever see. None of us could even believe our eyes when we saw that 2.2 was finally given an official release period after almost 7 years of waiting. And so, here we are today, with Zoink recently verifying the potential top 1 tidal wave, just weeks before the update was due to come out, just like we've seen before. Sputniks, again, shocked the community with his level what? The incredible level really gave 2.1 such an incredible end. Although we waited so long, it's still sad to see the 2.1 era come to an end. This one game, this one update, has put us all through many emotions, and it will continue to. But at last, it's finally time to see what 2.2 has to offer.